You're scrolling through real estate listings at midnight, and every single house that doesn't look like it's about to collapse costs $500,000. The kitchen has laminate countertops from 2003. The carpet is beige. There's fake wood paneling in the basement, and the listing agent has the audacity to call it a starter home. Meanwhile, you're sitting there doing mental math on your salary, wondering if you've somehow missed a massive promotion or if the entire housing market has collectively lost its mind. Spoiler alert, it's not you, it's the math. And the math is absolutely brutal. Today we're going to do something that real estate agents hate. We're going to calculate who can actually afford a $500,000 house in 2026. Not who the bank will give a loan to, but who can legitimately afford it without turning their life into a financial stress simulator. Because there's a massive difference between qualifying for a mortgage and actually being able to sleep at night after you sign the paperwork. Let's start with the uncomfortable reality. In dozens of US markets right now, $500,000 is the baseline. That's not getting you a mansion. That's getting you a 1,200 square foot box with 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a yard the size of a beach towel. In cities like Denver, Austin, or anything within commuting distance of a major metro, $500,000 is what normal people are expected to somehow come up with for normal houses. The median household income in America is around $84,000. So we're asking people making $84,000 to afford homes that cost 6 times their annual income. If that ratio sounds insane to you, congratulations, you're paying attention. But everyone keeps saying you can do it. The mortgage broker says you're approved. Your parents bought a house on way less. Some influencer on TikTok is flipping houses with no money down. So what's the problem? The problem is that everyone is lying to you about what affordable actually means. Let's start with the down payment, because that's where most people's dreams go to die. The old rule was 20% down. On a $500,000 house, that's $100,000 cash. Let me say that again. $100,000. The median savings account in America has around $8,000 in it. So you're not just a little short, you're $92,000 short. And before you say you'll just save it, let's do that math too. If you're making $84,000 a year and somehow manage to save 10% of your gross income, which almost nobody does, you're saving $8,400 per year. At that rate, it'll take you 12 years to save the down payment, assuming housing prices don't go up, which they absolutely will. Okay, so you skip the 20% down payment. It's like you put down 5% or 10% instead, which is what most people actually do. Congratulations, you just unlocked a new expense called PMI, Private Mortgage Insurance. This is the fee you pay every single month for the crime of not being wealthy enough to put 20% down. It's essentially a poverty tax that runs anywhere from $200 to $400 per month, depending on your loan. You're paying extra money every month for insurance that protects the bank, not you, because they're worried you might default. So you're already starting from a position of financial punishment. Now let's talk about the actual mortgage payment. You put down 10%, which is $50,000 that you somehow scrape together. That leaves you with a $450,000 loan. At current interest rates, somewhere in the 6% to 7% range, depending on your credit, your monthly mortgage payment is going to land around $2,750 to $2,850. That's just principal and interest. That number doesn't include a single other thing you need to actually live in the house. Let's add property taxes. Depending on where you live, you're looking at anywhere from $4,000 to $8,000 per year, which works out to roughly $500 per month if we're being conservative. Then there's homeowners insurance, which has skyrocketed in the past few years thanks to climate change making everything more expensive to insure. You're looking at another $250 to $350 per month depending on your location and whether your house is in a flood zone, fire zone, or tornado alley. Then there's maintenance, the thing everyone forgets about until the water heater explodes at 11 p.m. on a Sunday. The general rule is to budget 1% of your home's value per year for maintenance and repairs. On a $500,000 house, that's $5,000 annually, or about $417 per month. And don't forget the PMI we talked about earlier. Tack on another $200 to $400. So let's add this up. Mortgage payment, $2,850. Property taxes, $500. Insurance, $300. Maintenance, $417. PMI, $300. Your total monthly housing cost is now sitting at roughly $4,367, and that's assuming nothing breaks, you don't need a new roof, and your HOA doesn't randomly decide to repave the entire neighborhood and send you a $3,000 bill. Here's where it gets really fun. Financial advisors will tell you that you shouldn't spend more than 28% of your gross monthly income on housing. Banks will approve you if your total debt-to-income ratio is under 43%. Let's reverse engineer this. If you're spending $4,367 per month on housing, and that represents 28% of your income, you need to be making roughly $187,000 per year. If we use the more lenient 43% rule, you still need to be pulling in around $150,000 annually. And now we arrive at the punchline. Only about 10% to 20% of US households make $150,000 or more, which means 80% of American households cannot comfortably afford a $500,000 house under any reasonable financial standard. This isn't an opinion. This is just math being cruel. But you're thinking, people are still buying these houses. Who are these people? Some of them have dual incomes in high-paying fields. Some of them have family money. Some of them are stretching themselves so thin that one medical bill or job loss would collapse their entire financial life. Let me show you what that actually looks like when you run the numbers on a real household trying to make this work. Meet a household we'll call the Johnsons, two working professionals pulling in a combined $160,000 a year. That puts them well above the median, solidly in the upper middle class. They should be comfortable, right? Let's watch what happens when they buy that $500,000 house. First, their gross income of $160,000 sounds impressive until the IRS shows up. After federal taxes, state taxes, FICA, and maybe a modest 401k contribution, they're taking home around $9,500 per month. That's their actual money to live on. Now subtract that $4,367 monthly housing cost we calculated, they're left with $5,133 for literally everything else in their lives. 2 car payments because they both need to commute. There goes $800. Car insurance for 2 vehicles, another $250. Gas, because nothing is walkable in suburbia, $300. Student loans, because they needed those degrees to get the jobs that qualified them for the mortgage, conservatively $600. Health insurance premiums that their employers don't fully cover, $400. Groceries for a family that's trying to eat reasonably healthy, $800 if they're careful. Utilities for that bigger house, electricity, water, gas, internet, phones, $450. We're now at $1,533 remaining, and we haven't touched clothing, entertainment, kids' activities, car repairs, medical copays, or the psychological need to occasionally leave the house and pretend you have a life. Oh, and savings, emergency fund, retirement beyond that modest 401k, good luck. This household is spending 46% of their take-home pay on housing, not 28%, not even 35%, nearly half. And these aren't irresponsible people. They're not buying jet skis or taking European vacations. They're just trying to live in a house that the market tells them is normal. Here's what that actually feels like day to day. It feels like checking your bank account before buying groceries. It feels like saying no to your kid's field trip because that $35 might be needed if the check engine light comes on. It feels like lying awake at 2 a.m. doing mental math about whether you can afford new tires this month, or if you need to push it to next month and just pray it doesn't rain. It feels like being one unexpected expense away from disaster at all times. The HVAC breaks, that's $5,000 you don't have. Someone rear ends you and your deductible is $1,000. You're putting it on a credit card. Your kid needs braces. You're financing dental work like it's a car. This is the reality for households earning $160,000 trying to own a $500,000 home. Now imagine what it looks like for the household making $120,000 or $100,000, or God forbid, the actual median income of $84,000. At median income, buying a $500,000 house isn't tight. It's not even stretching. It's financial fantasy. It's mathematically impossible without either massive external help or accepting a level of risk that would make a skydiver nervous. But here's what makes this truly insidious. The housing market doesn't care about these numbers. Sellers list homes at $500,000 because that's what comparable houses sold for. Banks approve buyers at 43% debt to income because technically the loan won't default immediately. Real estate agents encourage buyers to stretch because their commission depends on closing the deal. Nobody in the transaction has an incentive to tell you that you're about to financially drown yourself. The system is designed to get you into the house, not to ensure you can comfortably afford it long term. And once you've signed those papers and moved your furniture, you're trapped. You can't just decide 6 months later that this was a mistake and walk away without destroying your credit and losing your down payment. So people stay. They stay in homes they can't afford, working jobs they hate because they can't risk any income disruption, slowly watching their savings evaporate, wondering why they feel so stressed when they're supposedly living the American dream. Let me tell you what the harsh truth sounds like. For probably 70% to 80% of American households, a $500,000 home is not affordable, not sustainably, not without accepting a level of financial precariousness that would have been considered reckless a generation ago. This isn't about personal failure. This isn't about not working hard enough or not being financially savvy. This is about a housing market that has completely disconnected from income reality. Home prices have increased roughly 400% since 1990. Median household income up about 180% in the same period. The math doesn't work. It cannot work. It will not work. And yet we keep pretending it does. We keep telling people that homeownership is essential for building wealth, which technically is true, but ignores the part where you have to survive the mortgage first. We keep perpetuating the myth that if you just budget better, skip the avocado toast, and work a side hustle, you can make it happen. But you can't budget your way out of a structural affordability crisis. You can't side hustle your way into a down payment when rent is eating 40% of your income. You can't manifest a lower interest rate through positive thinking. What you can do is understand the actual numbers so you can make an informed decision. Maybe that decision is to keep renting and invest the difference. Maybe it's to look at a $350,000 house instead, even if it means a longer commute or a smaller yard. Maybe it's to acknowledge that homeownership in your current market simply isn't viable right now, and that's okay. Because here's what nobody tells you. There is no prize for buying a house you can't afford. There is no trophy for being house poor. The stress of barely making your mortgage payment every month will erase any pride you felt the day you got the keys. The real question isn't whether you can technically get approved for a $500,000 house. The real question is whether owning that house will actually improve your life or just transfer your money to a bank while you stress about property taxes. And for most people, when you run the honest numbers, the answer becomes uncomfortably clear. So, what does this mean for you practically? Let's be direct. If you're looking at a $500,000 house right now, and your household income is anywhere south of $140,000, you need to stop. Just stop. You're about to make a financial decision that will dominate and potentially ruin the next decade of your life. I don't care what the mortgage broker says you're approved for. I don't care what your real estate agent says is normal in your market. I don't care that your friends somehow made it work. The numbers are the numbers, and they don't care about your feelings or your Instagram-ready kitchen dreams. Let's talk about what happens when you ignore this advice, because plenty of people do. You stretch, you convince yourself it'll be fine. Maybe you're betting on a future raise that hasn't materialized yet. Maybe you're planning to pick up freelance work on weekends. Maybe you're just really, really tired of renting and you want this so badly that you've stopped thinking rationally, so you buy the house. Congratulations. Now what? Month 1, you make the payment. It's tight, but you did it. Month 2, same thing. You're cutting back on eating out, skipping the gym membership, but you're managing. Then month 4, your car needs new brakes. That's $800 you didn't budget for because every dollar is already allocated to keeping the house. You put it on a credit card. Month 7, the air conditioning dies in July. The repair quote is $3,500. You don't have it. You finance it. Month 9, your spouse's hours get cut at work. Suddenly you're $600 short every month, and that emergency fund you were supposed to build, it never happened because there was nothing left to save. This is the reality of being house poor. You own a house technically, though the bank really owns it for the next 30 years, but you can't afford to live in it comfortably. You can't afford to maintain it properly. You definitely can't afford to enjoy it. Every unexpected expense becomes a crisis. Every financial decision is made through the lens of, can we still make the mortgage? You become a prisoner in your own home, working to pay for walls you're too stressed to appreciate. And here's the really twisted part. Because housing has become so unaffordable, we've normalized this misery. We've rebranded financial desperation as adulting. Oh, you're house poor? Welcome to homeownership. Can't afford furniture for 3 of your rooms. That's just part of the journey. Eating ramen for dinner because all your money went to the mortgage, you're building equity. It's like we've collectively agreed to pretend that struggling to afford basic homeownership is somehow a rite of passage rather than a symptom of a broken system. The math is screaming at you, but culture keeps whispering that you should buy anyway. Your parents bought a house at your age. Never mind that their house costs 3 times their annual income and yours costs 6 times yours. Your friends are buying. Never mind that you have no idea what their actual financial situation looks like, or whether they're drowning behind their freshly painted front door. Society tells you that renting is throwing money away. Never mind that being unable to afford your mortgage is also throwing money away, just with extra steps and worse consequences. So let me give you permission to do something radical. You can choose not to play this game. You can look at a $500,000 house, run the real numbers, and decide that it's not worth sacrificing your financial stability, your mental health, and your ability to build actual wealth. You can keep renting. You can save aggressively and wait for a market correction. You can look at cheaper markets or smaller homes. You can acknowledge that the American dream of homeownership has been warped into something unrecognizable and possibly unattainable, and that's not your fault. Because here's what actually builds wealth. It's not owning a house you can barely afford. It's having margin in your budget. It's being able to invest consistently. It's not having to choose between fixing your roof and contributing to your retirement account. It's sleeping at night without anxiety about how you'll cover next month's payment. Real wealth is freedom, not equity you can't access because you're trapped by the asset that's supposed to be making you wealthy. The financial industry has done an incredible job convincing people that homeownership is always the right move, that buying is always better than renting, that you should stretch as far as possible because homes always appreciate. But they're selling you a product. They profit when you buy, not when you make smart decisions. The bank makes money on your 30-year mortgage. The real estate agent makes money on the sale price. The insurance company makes money on your policy. Nobody in that equation makes money when you say, no thanks, this doesn't work for me. So if you're sitting there right now feeling priced out, feeling like Homeownership is slipping away, feeling like you're failing at some fundamental adult milestone. I need you to understand something. You're not failing. The system is failing you. Home prices have outpaced wage growth so dramatically that what was normal and achievable for previous generations is now a luxury item for most people. A $500,000 house is not a starter home. It's not affordable on a median income. It's not something you should stretch for unless you genuinely have the income to support it without financial acrobatics. Run your real numbers. Factor in all the costs. Be honest about your income stability, and if the math doesn't work, walk away. There is no shame in saying, this doesn't make sense for me right now. There is no trophy for buying a house that makes you miserable. The real win is making decisions based on reality rather than social pressure, on math rather than emotion, on your actual financial situation rather than what you wish it could be. That's how you avoid becoming another cautionary tale about the true cost of that $500,000 home. Look, I'm not telling you to give up on homeownership forever. I'm telling you to give up on the delusion that a $500,000 house is somehow within reach just because a bank will let you sign the papers. Those are two catastrophically different things. The bank's risk tolerance and your ability to actually live a life are not the same calculation. Maybe in 5 years, your income doubles, maybe the market corrects, and that same house costs $380,000. Maybe you relocate to a market where $500,000 actually buys you something reasonable instead of a glorified apartment with a mortgage. But right now, today, with current prices and current incomes, this math is broken for most people, and pretending otherwise doesn't make you optimistic. It makes you a future statistic in someone else's YouTube video about the foreclosure crisis. So here's my actual advice. Stop looking at what you qualify for and start looking at what you can genuinely afford without turning your life into a financial tightrope act. Find the number where you can pay the mortgage, handle the maintenance, save for emergencies, invest for retirement, and still occasionally remember what it feels like to not be stressed about money. For most people, that number is nowhere near $500,000, and that's completely fine. You're not less successful because you're being realistic. You're not failing at adulthood because you refuse to financially drown yourself for granite countertops. You're just doing math that apparently nobody else wants to do. The housing market will keep pretending these prices make sense. Banks will keep approving loans that shouldn't exist. Real estate agents will keep telling you it's a great time to buy. But you don't have to participate in collective financial insanity just because everyone else is. Sometimes the smartest move is recognizing when the game is rigged and choosing not to play.